Hello everybody, Abed's brother here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the performance of Oblivion Remastered on some old gaming PCs. Oblivion Remastered was developed by Virtuous and Bethesda and published by Bethesda Softworks. It was released on April 22nd, 2025. It uses the Unreal 5 engine and needs DirectX 12 version 12.1. On screen you can see the minimum and recommended specifications there. It's pretty demanding game. We're going to be under minimum spec for most of this video. For the first test system, we will be testing with the i7-4790 and GTX 1060. Now this one was a bit of a challenge. I am under no illusions about just how good this was going to perform. It was never going to perform well, but I wanted to see if it would work. And it did work. We're on FSR Ultra Performance, which is basically 360p. And you can see we're right about, we got a little stutter there. I did get a warning when I booted up the game that it was, it needed 6 processing cores or more, but when I said to load the game, oh, we got some enemies here. When I said to continue anyway, it did continue on anyway, as you can see, and it's not, doesn't look like it's really loading up the, well, I guess we have to fight them. Looks like we're not loading up the CPU too badly. But again, this is not exactly a high-stress environment for the CPU. We're basically playing at 360p. And we are actually incredibly fortunate that the GTX 1060 is capable of playing games with DirectX 12.1. I actually tried playing this on my R9 Fury and my R9 290, but they are only compatible... Are they there? Oh, they're going to go fight her. I have to save them. But the R9 290, GTX, and R9 Fury are both only compatible with DirectX 12 version 12.0. So they actually, the game refused to start. Try not to hit her. Don't want to aggro her. Close. You can see... Did she get him? Oh, she got him. You can see in some of that, you can even see that like when I sheathed the mace, that there's basically ghosting happening on screen from the FSR, and unfortunately when trying to play at this low of a spec, that's just what you have to deal with. I picked Cheydon Hall for this because it actually has a very nice approach.
Good to see you.
Oh, wow, look at the tree. Oh, it loaded in. Some serious stuttering there. But it actually has a fair amount of foliage in the city. You know, the Imperial City has a lot of NPCs, but it's a lot of straight edges. There's some trees there too, but Cheydon Hall just seemed like it was quite a bit more leafy.
Well met.
But yeah, so you should check your GPU to see if this will run on it, because it does need DirectX 12.1, and Pascal does provide compatibility with 12.1. So this was this is definitely the absolute minimum. I could play the game like this if the blurriness did not give me a headache. You know, 30 FPS here. This is not terrible in terms of frame rate for me, and it's not actually too stuttery. Oh, mountain lion up there. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing ghosting there whenever there's any significant amount of motion going on. Come on, can I get a free shot? I did! Ha! I've been working on my archery. That's too bad. Alright, but this is definitely, this is performant enough for me to play it, but, you know, visually, you know, FSR, to me, starts to look bad below, anything below balanced, and even then you've got some upscaling artifacts on screen. Ultra Performance is just, if this is what you have and you're desperate to play it, it works, but now we go to our test system 2, Ryzen 5 5500, and a new addition to my suite, the Intel Arc A770 on Linux. And this one is going to be interesting. We're going to start off with low settings. FSR, no upscaling. So it's the lowest possible settings with no upscaling. And we do have an artifact in the lower left corner of the screen. I do not know what that is. My standard for the A770 is simply that I want it to outperform the Vega 64. That's it. I don't feel like that's a big ask. And it is paired with the best CPU I have, and yes, in my test suite, and yes, rebar is on. But, so 30 FPS, 1080p low, no upscaling. This seems like it's underperforming. The GPU is showing it's fully stressed. We're getting, again, 29 to 30 FPS. But this is a GPU with a maximum TDP of 225 watts, and we're only drawing 160. So, first gen Arc has similar problems to some Vega GPUs from back in the day, where the render pipeline could be fully occupied, but not all the shaders would be utilized. Something to do with the architecture, and I think that's what we're seeing here. Because the power draw is just not up there. That, to me, speaks to lack of proper utilization. And some of that is just the A770 architecture. I mean, I could play it like this, I think. But there's a feature of Unreal 5, because Oblivion Remastered is an Unreal 5 engine game. There's a feature of Unreal 5 called Execute Indirect. I honestly don't know what that is. I just know that Intel Arc does not support that feature in hardware. It has to use software emulation for that feature, and that hurts the frame rate. So if anybody with Unreal 5 experience knows what that is and feels like explaining it a bit in the comments, I would appreciate it for sure. So that is 1080p low, no upscaling. So now, let's go to... What are we going to go to? We're still at low. Let's go to FSR Quality. Yeah. Which is basically 720p. So we were about at 30 FPS before. Now, with FSR Quality, we're seeing an improvement of about 10 to 12 FPS. And this is still at 1080p with the lowest possible settings. But yeah, Execute Indirect, I don't know what it is. I understand it's very common in Unreal 5. First generation Intel Arc has to use software code to handle that feature, whereas the Intel Battlemage B series can handle Execute Indirect commands or whatever in hardware. So the B series GPUs from Intel should handle Unreal 5 quite a bit better just because of that. So yeah, it's just FSR Quality. I think it's definitely worth it to turn it on here. Instead of just using it for native AA, actually turn FSR on, because that gives us a little bit of buffer. Gives us about 10 to 12 FPS between, what we're playing at and 30 FPS of something happens and the frame rate dips. We're only going to be dipping down to 30 FPS instead of dipping under it, hopefully. And I don't think this is a situation where a better CPU is going to magically produce better results. I'm really not seeing that. Not here. The GPU is pretty much fully stressed here. It's just got the low power draw, which, like I said earlier, is to me indicative of pipeline optimization problems. And yes, I'm running this benchmark at a different time from the 1060 benchmark. In between, I got the Boots of the Crusader, so now wild animals don't attack me. But So FSR quality, definitely an improvement over just no upscaling. But now, because I know I would get questions about this... Oh, I left screen space on. I was running a whole bunch of tests, so these clips are assembled from several different sessions. Yeah. I don't think screen space does much in terms of stress, but now let's go to XeSS quality, because I know people are going to want to see that. And that does not provide any additional benefits. So we went from FSR quality to XeSS quality, and the performance is about the same as FSR quality. Maybe a frame or two better, but not much. And my question about XeSS is it recognizing that I have an Intel GPU installed? Because XeSS does have an open source code base, and if it doesn't detect an Intel GPU, it will use the open source version of the code instead of the one that is designed to take advantage of the Xe processors on an Arc GPU. So maybe because it's Linux, it might not have detected the Intel GPU, so it's just using the open source code base, and then it's not really giving much benefit, or maybe it is detecting it and it is using XeSS. I honestly don't know the answer to that, and I don't know how to check which code it's using. But oh yeah, I almost forgot. This is using the i9-15 driver, not the Xe driver.
Yes.
From the research that I did, mostly on Forenix.com, the testing done by Michael Larabelle, it seems like the Xe driver does not actually produce many gains in gaming testing. And the i9-15 driver is literally, at least for the A770. If you're on a B series Battle Mage Arc GPU, that the Xe driver is, that's the one you get. But for Alchemist, the first generation Arc, you are definitely dealing with the i9-15 driver. And gaming gains, you don't really get many gaming gains by switching to the Xe driver on Alchemist. But that is the A770 at 1080p on Linux in Oblivion Remastered. Kind of disappointing, to be honest. Kind of disappointing. But now we go to test system 3, which is the i5930K with the Radeon Vega 64. And I'm going to tell you right up front, Vega 64 remains the bargain champion right now. So we're going to start off with 1080p low settings, just like we did with the A770. And we're going to be at FSR no upscaling. So FSR without upscaling, we are at 40. We're around 40 FPS. So we're 10 FPS higher than the A770. And for a GPU that I would expect to perform about the same, it's 30% faster. It's a whole 10. The Arc with 1080p low, no upscaling, was getting about 30 FPS. We're getting about 40. That's just crazy to me. Because the Arc A770 is a much newer architecture and should have all this additional power, but the Vega 64 is still a decently powerful GPU, and the Radeon Linux driver is just so optimized at this point. It's really, really kind of incredible to me how viable Vega 64 continues to be. And for those wondering, I am running the same undervolt on this Vega 64 that I described in my video about undervolting Vega. Now, that video about undervolting Vega was made on Windows, but I am running the same undervolt here on Linux using core control. We're here running through Cheydinhal. We're still high 30s, low 40s. And again, this is with no upscaling. Just 1080p low settings. And the 5930K, more than enough to handle Oblivion Remastered. And to me, the game really looks best with no upscaling. It just looks sharper, even at low settings. So the one thing that bothers me is seeing all the grass pop in at close range like this. That's a little weird to me, but I'd put up with that just for this frame rate. Let's try. So now we're going to try something here. I think we're going to try FSR Quality. Is this FSR Quality? Yes, it is. Okay, so we're going to go for FSR Quality now. And we went from 40 FPS, so this is basically 720p. We're going to go from 40-ish FPS to almost 60. Looks like we're even going to hit 60 a couple times, but we're going to be upper 50s here. So if you're looking for a budget build and you're looking to throw together something that can play Oblivion Remastered with a bit of, well, effectiveness, because this to me is absolutely playable. You're almost at 60 FPS here. Yeah, you're using upscaling, but I mean, hey, it's way better than the GTX 1060. It's way better than the Intel Arc A770. The A770 with FSR Quality was getting up in the low 40s. We're getting almost 60. So at this point, we're almost 50% better. It's kind of crazy. And the A770 is paired with the better CPU. Keep that in mind. This is an older CPU with not as much performance here. And we're using about 6 gigs of VRAM, so this is definitely, if you want to try it on like a 980 on a Maxwell GPUs, 980 Ti is the weakest one I would try, just because it does need that VRAM. You can argue about whether it should need it or not, but fact is it does. It needs about 6 gigs. And back out in the world. Fewer things to render at once. We're over 60. Pretty crazy. Vega GPUs have gone up a little bit. So if you're get a Vega 56 instead of a 64, if you get to a good one with a good cooler and clock it higher, should get close to the same performance. If you're at the same clock, you'll be about 10% slower here. So now, what are we doing here? So now, okay, I thought we'd try an experiment here, and I turned the settings up to medium with screen space reflections and no upscaling, and I wanted to see what we would get. So now this is 1080p medium preset with screen space reflections, no upscaling. And we're almost at 40 FPS. And the game just looks so much better. It solved most of that short-range pop-in that to me was... Oh, we got a little stutter there. It solved most of that short-range pop-in that to me was visually annoying. Now, Oblivion is not a game that needs super fast response times. Maybe if you're going to do an Archer build, but 30 FPS response times, so maybe you think about kicking on frame gen. I didn't record any footage with frame gen because that's clearly that's verboten, that's forbidden. It's not something any true gamer admits to using or profiting from or benefiting from or whatever, but this is a fairly good implementation of FSR frame gen in this game.
Can you spare a coin?
So if that's something you don't mind doing, you could definitely, with these settings, you could kick on frame gen and get about 50 FPS here, 50 to 55. I don't think it'll quite hit 60 at 1080p medium. But I mean, this is 1080p medium. The game finally looks, you know, close to the way it should, and the Vega is... It's pushing a bit to get it done. You know, it's definitely... The fan is cranking up. I can definitely feel the heat coming out of the back of the PC. But 1080p medium, 30 to 40 FPS. That's crazy good. That's crazy good for a GPU this old on a game this unoptimized. And Unreal 5 can be optimized. It's just that, in this case, nobody bothered to optimize it. So for the panorama, we got about 36, 37 FPS here. That's just crazy. So for the final test run, we're going to stay on 1080p medium, but I'm going to do FSR Quality. And now we went from low to mid 30s to just about 50 FPS. I would still, if you're fine with 30 FPS response times, I wouldn't use upscaling here. I just think the image looks so much sharper. Or I'd play on lower settings with no upscaling. I generally prefer the sharper image, but I mean, if you're getting 50 FPS here, we get that stutter at that spot again. If you're playing at 50-ish FPS here, and then you kick on frame gen, you'll be getting around in the 70s. But 1080p, it's basically 720p here. So we've got FSR quality on.
What is it?
But Oblivion is not a game that needs super high frame rates, that's for sure. No. I went for F instead of for E. And yeah, Vega 64 continuing to show why it is one of the best used bargains you can find. Best bargains you can find on the used market if you can find it for 60 to 80 bucks. You know, if you go with something like a RX 480, yeah, you'll have the VRAM to get it done, but an RX 480, you're going to need to use upscalings right out the gate. The RX 480 is going to be competitive with GTX 1060. Might be a little bit better, but not much. You need horsepower to run Oblivion Remastered. And the Vega 64 always had untapped potential. It always seemed like AMD couldn't quite unlock the greatness that was hidden in that GPU, but the Vega driver, the Linux driver, definitely seems to tap into some of that. Very impressive performance from the Vega 64. So, GTX 1060, bare minimum. Intel Arc A770, very disappointing. I feel like it should have done a lot better. I felt like it should have at least matched the Vega, and instead it was between about 10 to 20 FPS behind the Vega, which is just stunning. And that was with the A770 paired with a better CPU than Vega was. So, yeah. If you're looking to play Oblivion Remastered on Linux on a budget build, definitely look for a Vega. Vega 64, Vega 56. Like I said, if you find a Vega 56 instead of a 64, but it has a good cooler and you can overclock the Vega 56 higher than the Vega was running here. I think my 64 was running about 1580 megahertz. If you can overclock it to 1650, 1700, you'll probably get close to the same performance I had here. If you get a Vega 56 and you have to run it at the same clocks I did, you're probably going to find the 56 is going to be about 10% slower than the 64. But that is definitely, Vega 64 is definitely the bargain GPU to look for if you want to play Oblivion Remastered at 1080p on Linux. That's all I got for you today. If this video is useful to you, please give it a thumbs up. And thanks for watching.